Welcome to another episode of the Gull-Mouth Action podcast, where we take a look at all the latest goings on at Brighton, Hove Albion and Crawley Town. I'm Matt Polk, and this week I'm joined by Sam Morton, who covers both Brighton and Crawley Town, Albion writer Henry Bryant and Reds expert Mark Dunford. Brighton endured a week to forget as they suffered on their travels in the Premier League. We'll bring you all the reaction from Albion's games at Fulham and Leicester respectively, as well as look ahead to Sunday's huge game against Brighton's bitter rivals Crystal Palace. And we'll also bring you all the latest from Crawley Town. You can read all the stories we are talking about with videos and pictures online at sussexworld.co.uk/sport. And you can check out other great videos on shotstv.com and Freeview channel 262. You may also be watching on Latest TV. So thank you very much for tuning in. But we will start at Craven Cottage, where Brighton's long wait for a Premier League win at Fulham continues. The Seagulls are beaten 3-1 by the Cottagers last Thursday amid horrendous conditions. Henry, you were at that game. Sum that game up for us, please. It does seem like another night to forget at Craven Cottage for the Seagulls.
Oh, definitely. It was so poor from the Albion to start with. And Hazilla went for that back three. And at the start, a lot of journalists were thinking, oh, that's interesting, doing that against a side that haven't beaten in the Premier League, sort of in the history of sort of Brighton. And Alex Iwobi in that fourth minute already pushing the defence and forced the mistake from goalkeeper Verbruggen, and straight away a goal down, and it caused a lot of issues for the Albion. Defence seemed really shaky in this one, but it was luckily Carlos Baleba in the 56th minute to get a goal back for the Albion after some really good passer move play with João Pedro linking up with Carlos Baleba, and a really nice goal and a somersault to finish. And Albion fans in that corner of the Craven Cottage Stadium was really going for it. They thought that this was where their luck changes. And then there was a really strange goal where there was a corner that came in and bounced off of Matt O'Reilly, who was just the hero a few games ago when that game was played against Manchester City to allow Albion to win 2-1 against Man City. But he was the man at fault for that own goal. It was sort of a debate on whether Bart Verbruggen should have come for it, because it was sort of in the middle of that box where he could have claimed it. And after that, Brighton heads dropped, and it was Alex Iwobi again in the 87th minute who was able to score from just outside the edge of the box with a really lovely finish. And Brighton just gave him too much time, and he looks like a real good player for the Fulham fans. The guys I heard behind me who were sort of the fans of the Fulham team were saying that he's really on fine form at the moment, and you can see he's really enjoying his football here. Fulham have got a really good setup, but Brighton was so poor on the night. I think the way that Hazella set up for that one wasn't right at all, and showed a little bit of naivety, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Post-match, Hazella said there would be no change to Albion's playing style, and as you said, it just didn't quite work. What do you make of that? Is it admirable that Hazella's sticking to his principles, or does it just smack of just pure stubbornness?
A mix of both, I'd say, without trying to be a cop out there. I spoke to Hazella about it at the end, and it took him a little while to think about what he wants to say to the question of three at the back. Do you think that adds too much pressure to the defenders and the style of play that we're trying to play in this game? Does that allow the other team to attack, put pressure on Brighton, and then it's an uphill battle when that goal does go in? He thinks that Brighton play better with three at the back, which I personally disagree with. I think that you do need four at the back, as we saw with that Leicester game. He did change his style of play a little bit, because he did go back to that four at the back, not three at the back, maybe thought as a precaution. And although that game didn't quite work out for Albion fans as they had hoped at one stage of the game, I think that Hazella's still got that little note of naivety. As Darren Howard, another Albion writer for Sussex World, mentioned, Brighton haven't had a full 90 minutes yet. And this is still a real cause for concern, because it's in that last 10, 15 minutes that we are seeing Albion crumble when they are getting these leads. It's the second time now, once against Wolves and also in terms of the way they played against Leicester. But it does seem like Hazella is sticking to his guns, even if that is adding an extra man at the back for a little bit of cushion in there. But it'll be interesting to see how things work out for the rest of the season, because obviously Albion are playing some really nice football. They've signed over £200 million worth of players, but it's just sort of mixing that and putting that into a consistent season. And you're not going to have a consistent season if you're able to go a few goals ahead, or you're able to concede early and not able to have that full 90 minutes that Albion fans are looking for to obviously get back into Europe for a second time.
Yeah, well, you mentioned Albion chucking away leads. No more perfectly encapsulated on Sunday when they contrived to throw away a 2-goal lead in the last 4 minutes of struggling Leicester. The Seagulls looked to be cruising at 2-0 thanks to goals from Tarek Lamptey and Yankuba Minte, but Jamie Vardy and Bobby De Cordova-Reid struck at the death to complete a stunning comeback for Ruud van Nistelrooy's side. Sam, where did it all go wrong for Brighton?
Yeah, another really poor result after they were in such control. As you mentioned, Tarek Lamptey scored a cracking goal from Estupiñán's cross that fell right to Lamptey on the other wing, and he curled one right into the top corner. It was a fantastic goal. And then that 1-0 lead they managed to keep for quite a long time, actually, right up until the 79th minute of the game, when, as you mentioned, Minter put a defender on the floor with some really brilliant composure to wait for the exact right time to shoot, and he managed to make it 2-0 with just 10 minutes of the game remaining. So you think at that point, just a case of just seeing it out, being professional. But as we know, we've seen a lot of times this season that it's never game over. Even if you're 2-0 up with a short amount of time in the game, we saw it against Wolves where Brighton managed to throw away a 2-goal lead. And we nearly saw it at Bournemouth. I know they had 10 men, but very nearly they almost let that lead slip there as well. But they did manage to hold on that one. But this time they were made to pay, and it was Jamie Vardy that did the damage. It was a great goal from him to half the deficit, and then really, really good composure to be unselfish and to play in Bobby De Cordova-Reid as well, to Cordova-Reid to put in the equalising goal in the first minute of injury time. So a really poor result for Brighton. The fans were absolutely furious from what I saw on social media that they've managed to let the lead slip again. Obviously, it's 3 games without a win now after that poor draw at Southampton, defeat at Fulham, and now this draw at Leicester. It is a bit of a concern, I think, for it to keep happening in this manner. There definitely needs to be something addressed, and it's just a question of whether it's mentality or the setup. And obviously, it probably could be a bit of both. And I think I read an article from Andy Naylor at The Athletic, and he's saying it could be down to a lack of experience in the team now. You've obviously got James Milne has been out for a long time. Lewis Dunker's obviously just returned. He is part of this defence that this did happen to, so you can't really point to that too much. But obviously, we've lost Brighton lost Pascal Gross and Andrew Lallana in the summer, and there's some really experienced players that they're missing at the moment. So it could be part of the reason why they're just unable to see out these games, see out the leads that they managed to build in the games.
Well, post-match after the Leicester game, Hertzler came out and said everyone in the stadium thought the game was done at 2-0. I would be furious if I was a Brighton fan if I heard that, Sam, because to me that seems to think as if the game was won. Does that again show a level of naivety a little bit from Hertzler?
Yeah, it's an unusual comment. It's not one you hear very often. Usually you hear the opposite. Like you think the manager will be telling the players the game's never done until the final whistle. Maybe that is what he's telling players, and it could just be the wrong choice of words, perhaps, in saying that maybe he's seeing it from the point of view that you're 2-0 up, it should be game over, is maybe what he's trying to say. But I think if he is saying that, and it does, it could be a bit of a naive thing to say, because at the end of the day, it's football, and anything can happen until that final whistle is blown. Yeah, we've seen it countless times what can happen in football, and it's very hard to predict. So I feel like, there is an element that needs to be improved there, whether it's the setup or the mentality or bringing in some more experienced players as the game gets into the closing stages. But yeah, there's definitely a problem in that sense, and hopefully it doesn't linger for too long, because without these results, they'd be well in the mix in the top 4. I think that's probably the frustrating thing for Brighton. They've had some cracking results against the best teams in the league, but they've had such a poor record against the supposed weaker teams, and it seems to be this late goals that keeps coming up and hindering them. So if they can sort that out and see out the goals they get early on, then I think there'll be no problems. But yeah, definitely an issue at the moment.
Yes, and this Sunday is a small matter of Brighton v Crystal Palace at the Amex. Palace sits 17th in the Premier League, just 4 points clear of the drop zone. How do you see this one going, Henry? Normally when a team plays a team in 17th, you think, oh, okay, we should win this. But considering Albion's form, there cause for concern?
I think so. I think that this is going to be a really big test for Hertzler, because we are coming under fire for losing these games that we really should be seeing out. Crystal Palace are winless in their last 6 league games against Brighton, and that their longest run without a victory against the Seagulls since the run of 10 between 1979 and 1986. So if Hursley's not able to get a result here and Crystal Palace are able to see a result, then I think there's a lot of question marks that will be raised over the way that he is setting up his team and this style of play. I think that it's a real big grudge match, a huge rivalry on the South Coast. But I do feel like in terms of this game, Brighton need to get something to build up momentum into this festive period to keep going, because they've still got some really hard fixtures to go in this festive season. And in terms of the way that Brighton are playing right now, they do seem really leggy and shaky. I mean, going back to that Leicester game, 2-0 up, and with the likes of Igor sort of near the end playing around at the back like he was in a Sunday league game and he was one of the best kids on the pitch, and then getting tackled and then the goal coming, it is a level of naivety. And a few comments from the manager are causing some concern for Albion fans because of the way they're playing right now. So it's all to play for, but I do feel like this is a huge game for Hurstler and whether he is able to make this the best season possible for Albion.
Well, fingers crossed for a good result on Sunday. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will talk all things Crawley Town. Welcome back to part two. And Crawley Town were due to welcome Stevenage to the Broadfield Stadium, but the game was postponed due to safety concerns. Tell us a little bit more about the safety concern, Mark. I knew that the weather wasn't particularly good for most of the country on Saturday, but what was deemed to be unsafe at the Broadfield Stadium?
Yeah, it's a funny one because I think this was the furthest game west in like the top couple of divisions that was actually called off. And they said in their statement that it was due to the severe high winds in the local area. But the difficult decision was made in the interest of supporter safety because the forecast was only going to worsen as the hours led up before kickoff. But they said owing to the temporary nature of the East Stand, which is due to hold close to 1,000 spectators, the safety team at the club, alongside the safety advisory group in EFL, decided that the risk of potential structural damage was too significant to ignore. And as they said, they were naturally disappointed that they had to call it off. But the East Stand is a temporary structure. It's been there for about 12 to 10 years. I can't remember exactly when. And I mean, I sometimes call it like the big gazebo or whatever. And it was obviously they thought the winds could probably do some damage to it, and the last thing you want is a piece of that temporary stand falling on a supporter or hitting a supporter or anything. So I think it's a sensible decision, but it has really, really highlighted that obviously something needs to be done with that stand. It's how long can it still be called temporary when it's been there 12, 10 years? So it was an interesting one. They called it off early. A decision was made early. So luckily, it was only Stevenage, so fans hadn't left yet because it's only a couple of hours away from Stevenage. So it was a sensible decision, the right decision, and a timely decision as well. We all remember what happened MK Dons first leg of the playoff semi-final last year, where it was called off quite late. So, yeah, a good decision, but I think it's highlighted a bigger problem.
The Crawley Town Supporters Alliance, then released a statement calling for a permanent East Stand following the postponement. Sam Morton, who did the CTSA address in their statement, and how likely do you think we are to seeing a permanent East Stand at the Broadfield Stadium?
Yeah, so in the statement, the Supporters Alliance said, in light of the concerns about the stand, it is of the opinion that the East Stand does not reflect the standards reasonably expected of a professional football club competing in the third tier of the world's most prestigious football league system. As a result, the CTSA intends to initiate discussions with Crawley Borough Council in their capacity as the landlord of Broadfield Stadium to urge them to present proposals to Crawley Town Football Club for the construction of a permanent East Stand structure at the earliest opportunity. We will keep our members informed of any updates as this matter progresses. So it's an interesting one. Obviously, it's been one that's rumbling on for quite a long time. Various issues with the finance side of it and the ownership issue has just been mentioned there. But in June, the Crawley Town coroner Preston Johnson said Wagner United are not miles apart on the price on buying the Broadfield Stadium from Crawley Borough Council, which would solve a lot of the issues in terms of that ownership problem. And in an interview with The Athletic, Johnson revealed talks have been positive and amicable as they look to take control of the ground. He said at the time, we're not miles apart on the price, and they understand the value of having a thriving football club in the town. Talks have been positive, and we'll get something sorted. So that statement obviously from in June. So interesting to see what he'd say now, and in light of the statement from the Supporters Alliance. But it's definitely a problem to solve in that sense. And And obviously, if games are being postponed because of it, it's definitely going to frustrate fans. And I do agree that obviously for League One, there needs to be a solution to bring it up to standard.
You spoke to Rob Elliott on Wednesday, I believe. Mark, what did he have to say about the situation?
Yeah, he obviously, I think he just wants his side to play in front of a really good stadium. So he just said it would be another step to where the club wants to get in terms of being in a league like League One and then developing the club, not just on the pitch, but off the pitch. So I think he just wants to see the club generally improve on and off the pitch. So he obviously backs any call to do that. And he said, as long as the mentality's there to try and improve, that's all he's looking for. So I think any moves going forward, we will back it. But going back to Preston Johnson, I think he said sort of at a fans forum or something, or an interview I did with him where he said about buying the stadium. And he said there's lots of improvements that need to be made because fans always make suggestions to him. Oh, we need to improve this. But I don't think they're going to spend the money on the ground unless they own it, because they're only enhancing it if Crawley Council own it. And then at some point they might sell it off. I mean, I'm not saying suggesting there's been any suggestion of that at all. But and I kind of agree with Preston Johnson on that. Why would you spend money on something you don't own? So it'd be interesting if they can buy it and really improve it. But yeah, like Rob Elliott says, well, I think Wagby have got the best intentions with off the field improvements. They've done a lot. This will be a huge, but a big cost as well, though. And building a football stand, planning applications, etc., and all that is a big thing. So it will be a big cost, but I can't see anything happening until Wagby own it, to be honest.
Well, results didn't go completely Crawley's way on Saturday, and unfortunately they now find themselves in the relegation zone again. But it's incredibly tight, isn't it, Sam? I think a win against Peterborough on Saturday could see them actually jump above their opponents, I think.
Yeah, it would do. It'd be a big win, and it just shows how tight it is at the bottom. There's only 5 points below. Crawley are only 5 points below 10th place at the moment, so it is very tight. But as you mentioned, they are back in the relegation zone because of wins from Northampton and Leyton Orient. So it's a difficult one, isn't it? Obviously, you don't like to see them in the relegation zone, and that would naturally be a concern. But when you look at the points and how close it is at the bottom, if you get a few wins, 2-3 wins, you're right back up there, and you can be mid-table before you know it. So no room for concern. I think the forms are a reason to be positive for Crawley at the moment. Some of the performances and results they've had of late, defence has been much improved, and they've been getting the goals to win games as well. So I think no reason to panic in being back in the relegation zone. But obviously it's a bit frustrating that they weren't able to play on Saturday, and because of that, they obviously now are behind on that game. So. Yeah, I think if you get a couple of wins, and they'll be out of trouble.
Well, the January transfer window is coming around very, very quickly. And do we expect much action from Crawley in this window, Mark? What's Rob Elliott had to say about his squad so far?
Yeah, it's a funny one. I can't see there being a lot of action because they've got quite a big squad. I know there's been a lot of injuries and that, but I think from what he was saying, we'll get onto the injuries updates in a minute, but there's a couple of players who have been out for a while who should be coming back certainly for this Christmas period. So yeah, it's a difficult one. I think what he told me yesterday, I said, I think for everyone, you want to try and improve the squad and you want to try and help in areas where we are lacking, where the depth isn't as strong, but that comes with a balance as well with finances and where we're at the club in terms of what we need. So he's sort of playing cards close to his chest there. I think, has he got a lot of money? I mean, Ben Levin told us a few weeks back that they will back Rob in the transfer market, but they have got players to come back from injury. He still hasn't had the full squad to work with, so I don't think he fully knows what his best side is yet either. But the one person I did ask him about was Anthony Story. No, sorry, Louis Story, not Anthony. Anthony Sweeney's the other one. Louis Story, who is assistant manager, and he was actually a player coach under Rob Elliott at Gateshead. And last week, Rob Elliott said to me that he's a defender, and he was still one of the best defenders in the National League before he came to Crawley Town. So he's obviously got a bit of talent there. He's in his early 30s. So whether he's someone to add to the squad, but Rob Elliott said if we can, they will, I think. But it all depends on budgets and whether they've got room in the squad to do that. So I can't see a huge amount of action, but I think they certainly need to strengthen in a couple of areas, maybe up top. And although Poleis he's doing well now, Will Swan's found a bit of form. So if they can keep them injury free, that might not need too much strengthening. So we'll see. But I can't see a lot of action. But it'd be interesting to see how Anthony Story does. Keep saying Anthony Story. Louis Story does. Anthony Story, did he used to manage Horsham? Anthony Story.
I think he did a very long time ago.
That's where I am.
I think politely we'll say he didn't do a very good job, if memory serves. But anyway, moving swiftly on. In the here and now, Crawley travelled to Peterborough on Saturday, looking to build on that fabulous win at Charlton. No doubt the Reds will go there full of confidence, won't they, Mark? And you mentioned it there. What's the latest in terms of injuries at the Reds?
So obviously the likes of Josh Flint is out, we think, for most of the season now with his MCL. But the good news is Rob Elliott was saying yesterday that Junior Quaterna and Dion Conroy have both had a full week of training. Said it might be a little bit too soon to get them involved in Saturday, but they might be. So that's really good news, especially with the Christmas period coming up. I think they've got 5 games in 12 days over Christmas. So anyone they can get in to help boost that squad, certainly in the defensive areas, because he said Toby Malarkey, Charlie Barker and Joy McCain have all played far more minutes than he wanted them to. So they've even had to play in the Bristol Street Bristol Street Motors Trophy. So sorry, God, it's that uninteresting. I don't even know how to say it.
Get your teeth in, old man.
So that's really good. But the most interesting thing is that Peterborough's top scorer, Kwame Poku, is out for 3 months. He scored 10 goals this year, and I think he's got something like 5 assists. So he's obviously a really good player. But he's out for 3 months, so that's a little bit of a boost for Crawley. But as Rob Elliott says, they've got quality all over the pitch in Peterborough. So he didn't see it as a massive bonus for them. But obviously, any club is going to miss their top scorer and most effective player. So hopefully, Crawley can take advantage of that. But if we can see Conroy, who hasn't played since pre-season. I think he got injured against Palace in the pre-season friendly. If we can see him return, there'll be a real big boost for Crawley.
Absolutely. And as ever with the podcast, we'll round out the score predictions, starting with the big one, Brighton v Palace on Sunday. Sam Morton, how do you see that one going?
A tight game. I think it's going to be. I'll go positive. I'll say 2-1 Brighton.
How do you see this one going, Henry?
I think it's going to be 1-1. Crystal Palace have drawn 3 of the last 4 games, so I see this one being a draw, 1-1.
And Mark Dunford, score predictions and taking umbrage with the fact that this is a perceived big one.
It's not even a derby. I'm going to go. Crawley Brighton's a closer derby. I'm going to go 1-1 as well.
1-1. And finally, Peterborough v Crawley. What do you reckon? I reckon that Crawley might get something here. Mark, call me an optimist.
Yeah, I think so. My heart is saying 2-3-1 Crawley, but I think my head is saying 1-1 or 2-2, and I think that will be a good result as well if they can get any kind of thing at Peterborough, and it's a good time to play them, I think, as well.
Absolutely. Sam, are we positive of a good result for Crawley?
Yeah, I think 1-1, which would be a good result away from home.
A very good result away from home. And finally, Henry, how do you see this one going?
Well, I have to agree with Mark. Peterborough have lost 3 of their last recent games. So I'm going to say 1-0 to Crawley. I'm going to go all guns blazing and say,
come on, Henry. I take my comment back about Brighton Crystal Palace.
I knew you would. No, good stuff.
Well, brilliant stuff. Well, fingers crossed for good results for Brighton and Crawley this weekend. And you can catch up with all the latest sports news covering everything we've talked about today at sussexworld.co.uk/sport. And you can watch more excellent videos on shotstv.com and Freeview Channel 262. Thank you very much for listening and or watching, and we will see you all next week.
Thanks, guys.